Just being an old rusty rat rod isn't an excuse to do sloppy work. It's a damn good excuse. I'm just kidding. Hey, what's up, everybody? Nate from Rusty Roller. This time I'll be tackling the radiator support, the gas filler neck, and the door. Good times. Really have my doubts on how well this is going to work. Pretty sure the radiator's out of I think like a 96 Honda Civic. It's the biggest one I could find that would fit in here. I'm not 100% positive if it's up to the cooling capacity of this 318, but I guess I'll find out. I had to trim this elbow back. It's so close to the front. You can see I got an electric fan on there. One of the better electric fans I could find that didn't cost $1,000. It pushes quite a bit of air. I had to reverse it to make it a pusher instead of a puller. Ideally, you want a fan on this side of the radiator pulling towards the motor to pull air through the radiator. But a pusher will work, about the only thing I can do. If this radiator doesn't work, then I'll either have to come up with some kind of rear mount radiator, maybe underneath the back end, or move the motor and tranny back a couple inches, at least a couple inches, probably 3 inches. Hopefully this works. Another problem I'm going to run into with doing it this way is that radiator sits pretty low. The cap is low. You really want the cap to be the highest point in the system so air can escape. But here, where that cap is now, it's hard to tell, but that's where the thermostat is. There's the cap on the radiator. It's hard to tell in the video, but they're just about even with each other. I think the radiator might just be a hair lower. So, probably going to get trapped air in there, and it's going to cause it to overheat. I might run like an inline radiator cap coming off this top hose, going here somewhere. So, to get that cap higher so air can escape out of that. Well, I had to bust out the high-dollar fender alignment tool. With all this bolted together, it wants to pull that way. I had to make brackets going from the fenders to the frame. That's 1/8-inch steel. When I tighten them up, it should straighten the whole front end out. It should go back to where it should be. I got the radiator just sitting there right now on a bottle jack. So I'll probably just do a 1-inch square tube across the bottom, 1 by 1. Not sure where I'm going to tie it into yet. Maybe those brackets. I think I'll use this old rebar that they left when they did the concrete here in the building. I think I'll go from these 2 bolts, kind of curve over. I think this is an original mount from a Honda. I went ahead and bought those. I don't know why. But anyway, so I'll go from these bolts, curve over. I'll weld the plate to that rebar to bolt that to. It'll go under this hose to this one, another plate there, and then curve over to the side of those bolts. That's the idea anyway. Enough yakking. Look at this. Either mice or rats chewed through my welding gloves. Little bastards. Making sure there ain't no spiders in there. Check out the custom paint booth. It's pretty humid outside, so normally I would just hang them in front of the garage door and open the garage door, paint them like that. But yeah, kind of humid, so I did it in here. I just threw this together real quick. It sucked. Probably won't be doing it like this again, but got the job done. So here's what we got. That is a 1x2 standing upright. Radiator's going to mount to that. And once I got that in there, I thought, well, if I hit something or somebody hits me in the front, that's just going to fold in. There's nothing supporting it. So I kind of tied into where the sway bar links bolt up to on each side with 1-inch square tubing. Bolted that on there. And then I thought, well, there's nothing supporting this grill at all. If I hit a parking block or something, or somebody backs into me or whatever, it's just going to fold in the grill and with hardly any pressure at all. So there's some more 1-inch square tubing with some 8-inch plates connected to the grill. It's 1,000 times stiffer, so it'll take a little more of an impact. So that's what I got. So now I'm going to mount the radiator in there. And we got a bunch of goodies from the Ups dude. Bunch of elbows, couplers. Got an overflow tank with some goofy ass orange hose. Got an inline radiator cap with the overflow tube on it. And I think I got more money in all these elbows and couplers than I do in the freaking radiator. Crazy expensive. So the radiator is officially in and mounted. Got the bottom hose plumbed. I was good to the top, but it was leaking around the thermostat housing, so I was going to replace that. And then I saw this. Yeah, that's looks pretty old. It's kinked. Looks like about the half the size it was when it was new. To be fair, whoever put that on probably didn't do it like that. Just over time and age kinked it. So I had to order new hose for that. Okay, so new thermostat is in. I replaced that hose. That was a pain in the ass. Short little bastard. There was no way I could have reached this little hose with all this bracketry in the way. So I went ahead and did it now before I put it back on. Well, it looks goofy, but hopefully it functions right. Goes up over the alternator like that, down to the thermostat. I got this goofy ass orange hose. It came with the overflow tank. I don't know why it's orange. I'll probably be changing that eventually. Looks retarded, but anyway. So now that's the highest point in the cooling system. So it should overflow right. Shouldn't get really much air trapped in the system, if any at all. I did block off the overflow port. You can't see it. I did block off the overflow port here with a plug, so it won't be flowing out of that anymore. I mounted the overflow tank right there. I just made a little bracket come off there, off the fender, and then down there. And I still have room for the belt tensioner pulley and wires to go into that little turn signal socket. And if I have to, I can adjust that. That's just a hose clamp. I can go up and down with that. Actually, I don't have much room to go down, but I can go up. So anyway, hopefully it works. I don't know. I have some doubts, but we'll see. Got plenty of hood clearance though. Thankfully, this hood is cavernous, so plenty of room to clear all that. Looks goofy as hell, but I think it might work. I guess we'll find out. All right, so I got the gas tank in, and man, I am glad I cut this little trap door when I put this floor in, because it makes it so much easier to access everything. If I have to replace that pump, boom, it's right there. So anyways, so there's where the filler neck is going to come in at, and that's just a tube sticking out of the tank. It's about 2 inches away from the side there. So this is the original fill tube from the Dakota, and that's kind of the mounting plate that it screws onto. So my problem is how I'm going to put gas in the tank, because this is not going to work, because there's 2 layers of steel here. There's one on the outside, of course, and then on the inside. Down where the filler neck is, it's about, from here to the inside of that is about 3.5. I think I measured 3 3/8, something like that. Well, anyway, so this is not going to work inside there, because it's going to be sticking out on the inside, in order to get it to mount correctly like it used to be in the Dakota, that would mean I would have to cut a hole in the floor and have it run up like that. And I don't want to do that. I want to keep it under the floor. So then I thought, well, I won't be able to use that original Dakota filler neck. It just required too much cutting, and I don't want to run the hose. I don't want to run it through there. So then I thought, well, I'll take the easy way out and spend some money and buy a couple 90 degrees. I'll have the 190 going there, up inside there, in between those two layers, and then come up like that, and then have another 90 coming up, point like that, and just have a cheap $25 flush mount gas cap on the outside that the rest of that 90 connects to. I priced it all out. It was well over $100 to do all that, and it would have been faster and easier. But I said, screw that. Let's cut some shit up. What I figured is I'm going to cut right here because it kind of expands. After this point, it expands. It gets bigger diameter. So I'm going to cut there. I'm going to cut this off right there. Weld it there. That'll shorten it up. I'll also cut this vent tube right there. Weld that in onto there. So that'll shorten this whole thing up, and it won't have this bend coming out like that. So then it will fit in between those two layers of steel. And I'll just have the neck inside there, and it'll just be coming up straight up like that, inside, in between there. And then I'll incorporate the original door from the Dakota, roughly right here, I think I figured, yeah, about right there. So then, all I'll really have to buy would be one 90-degree hose coming off the bottom of that filler neck and going over. That's all I would have to buy instead of all the other crap. So, yeah, it's more work, but whatever. It'll be a lot more satisfying and less money. That's about where the neck is right now coming out of that fuel tank. So that'll end up right about there, inside there. Then I'll have the door above that. Let's get to work. Okay, that's done. It ain't pretty, but it ain't got no pinholes. That's the main thing. Once it's in the truck, nobody will see it anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and sandblast it, slap some paint on it, and that'll be that. I also said I wouldn't paint stuff this way again, but here we are. Okay, so here's where I'm at now. I got the hoses cut and trimmed, and it was a real treat getting down in there and make the 90 in there. And man, it just barely works, but it works. So now my challenge is the gas door. So here's the door, and it's going to fit basically flush in there. Not perfectly flush, but I'm not going to split hairs over it. If it's close, that's all right. But my problem is to mount the plate for that hinge to mount onto. Now, since I can't see anything, obviously, when I have the door in like that, I can't see where to tack that plate on there. Then I'm going to take some measurements and use the old noggin. So basically, I need 3 measurements off this thing. I'm going to need the height, since the plate inside the truck where the nozzle mounts to is flush with the opening that this door is fitting in. Then I'm going to need to measure from here to the center of these bolts. That'll give me the height of my bolt holes on the mounting plate for the hinge. Then I'm going to need from the bolt hole, center of the bolt hole, over to the edge of here. That'll give me my side-to-side location of the plate inside there, mounting plate. And then I'm going to need the depth, basically from the edge of the outside door to the edge of this. And there's a problem there. As you can see, it's not parallel with the door itself. I want it to be parallel. So I'm going to have to open that hinge a little bit to where it is parallel. A height gauge would make all these measurements would make taking all these measurements easier, but I don't have one, so I'm just going to have to go off the table and probably stick something in this hinge to make it parallel with the top of this door so I can get an accurate measurement. So did you get all that? Huh? Okay, let's roll. Well, it's on, and somebody done screwed up. Yeah, that ain't right. As you can see, there's not really supposed to be that much of a gap there. I'm too far over that way, somehow. And I'm too far up, and I'm hitting the top here, and I'm hitting over here. So what I think I did was, I double, triple checked all my measurements before I welded that plate on there, and I was good. But what I didn't take into account was how this kind of angles down a little bit towards this way. I did that so it would be easier to get the gas pump in there, but I didn't take into account when I lined all this up and welded it, so I threw it all off. So I bent that back a little bit, and I think as I'm bending that back, the door wants to go up with it as it's going back. So that's where my height problem is coming from. And the side gap here, I was off somewhere, don't know, but whatever. Anyway, so I screwed it up, but I can fix it. I think if I just drill the holes out a little bit bigger on that plate, so I can have some adjustability to this door. I mean, it's functional and all. It opens and shuts, but not quite like I want it. So anyway, not that big of a deal, just a happy little mistake. Let's fix it up. After a bunch of filing and fine tuning, I think it's finally done. Turns out one of my mistakes is going to work in my favor because I have to have a gap back here so it has enough room to open, which I didn't. I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier, but anyway, so that kind of works out. I had to file these corners here because when you open it up, those corners want to hit against the body. So I'll file that open a little bit, and that's about as far as it opens, but I think that's going to be enough. Obviously, I can't tell until I get to a gas station, but it closes perfectly. It's almost flush. Almost flush, sticks out just enough to get your fingers up underneath there. Still a little gappy at the bottom, but that's all right. Once again, I'm not splitting hairs over this. It's a rat rod, and over here looks pretty close to being flush, just sticking out just a hair on the back of it. I think I'm good with that. And this is really close to the body, but still just enough to get your fingers up underneath there, open it up. So hopefully the gas nozzle fits in there. I guess I'll find out. And yeah, I might get a little water in there when it rains, but there's a bunch of rust holes down at the bottom to drain out of, so it's all right. So that's the beauty of building rat rods like this. Things don't have to line up perfectly. Things don't have to be nice and new and shiny. It all builds character too. And a little bit of rust is okay. And no, I'm not going to paint that gas door. It's going to stay just like that. So if any of this helped you out or gave you any ideas or inspiration, whatever, please like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Thanks.